It all began on a freezing December morning in Seattle, when a young homeless girl named Mara, barely 16, stood alone near the entrance of a crowded shopping plaza. Cars passed, people rushed by, and the world felt too busy to notice her trembling hands or the heavy backpack that held the few things she owned. She had spent the night under a bus shelter, hiding from the wind, praying it wouldn't rain again. But just as she started searching the trash can for a discarded sandwich, something caught her eye, an expensive-looking silver phone lying on the wet pavement, the screen still glowing. For a moment, her heart raced. That phone alone could feed her for a month. She could pawn it, maybe even get enough money to find a warm place to stay. But something deeper inside her refused to let her take advantage of someone else's loss. She wiped the screen with her sleeve, hoping it still worked, hoping she could find the owner. And this small decision would change her life forever. If you believe in kindness, humanity, and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. With her cold fingers, Mara tapped the screen, trying to access anything that could lead to the owner. The emergency contacts, the notifications, the wallpaper, everything pointed to someone who clearly lived a life far different from hers. The phone lit up with missed calls and messages, but she didn't dare open them. She walked into the plaza and approached a security guard, asking if anyone had reported a missing phone. The guard barely glanced at her, assuming she was begging again, and dismissed her without a second thought. The rejection stung, but she didn't give up. She found a bench under a large Christmas display and sat there praying the phone would ring again. And then it did. The name, Sophie Carter, flashed on the screen, and Mara answered quickly. A woman's worried voice filled the air, asking who had her phone and where she was. Mara explained everything as calmly as she could, though her voice shook from cold and fear. Sophie begged her not to move and said she was on her way. Mara waited, clutching the phone like a fragile piece of hope. Minutes later, a black SUV parked in front of the plaza, and a woman in her mid-30s stepped out. Sophie Carter, elegant yet warm-looking, hurried toward the girl. When she reached Mara, her initial relief turned into confusion. She hadn't expected a homeless teenager to be the one returning something most people would have walked away with. The contrast between their worlds was sharp, Sophie wearing a long beige coat and boots, Mara wrapped in a torn hoodie with a frayed backpack lying at her feet. Sophie thanked her with genuine emotion, trying to hand her a reward, but Mara refused. She only asked that the phone be kept safe, as she would never want someone else to lose the little they had. That moment struck Sophie deeply. She asked where Mara lived, and Mara hesitated, finally admitting she didn't have a home anymore. Her parents had passed away, she had no relatives, and life had slowly pushed her from couch to shelter to streets. Sophie felt an ache in her chest as she listened. She had come from a difficult childhood herself, raised by a single mom and only recently rising to success as a business owner. Something inside her refused to walk away. She invited Mara to sit in her SUV so they could talk. For the first time in months, Mara felt heat from a car heater, and tears gathered in her eyes before she could stop them. Sophie drove her to a nearby cafe and bought her warm food. As Mara ate like she hadn't eaten in days, Sophie watched quietly, her mind racing with thoughts. She asked more about Mara's life, and the answers only deepened her compassion, how Mara worked odd jobs for cash, how she feared shelters at night, how she avoided asking for help because she didn't want to burden anyone. Sophie felt something shift inside her. She knew she couldn't change the world, but she could change one life standing right in front of her. She asked if Mara would like to stay somewhere warm for a few nights. Mara hesitated, unsure whether she could trust a stranger, but something in Sophie's eyes made her feel safe. Sophie took her to a small but clean guest suite in her apartment complex and told her she could rest there while they figured things out. Mara was overwhelmed and cried silently as she showered for the first time in days, letting the warmth wash away layers of fear she had carried for too long. Over the next week, Sophie helped her buy clothes, arranged medical checkups, and even contacted social services to help her rebuild her identity documents. She introduced her to people who could guide her and encouraged her gently to dream again. Mara had forgotten what it felt like to imagine a future, but with every passing day, she began to see light again. Sophie wasn't just offering temporary help, she was giving her dignity, stability, and hope. Weeks turned to months. Sophie enrolled her in a local high school, helped her find therapy support, and even hired her part-time at her own company to help with administrative tasks. Mara proved hardworking, smart, and incredibly resilient. Her life began to blossom, not because of charity, but because someone finally believed in her. And Sophie? She realized that helping Mara filled a place in her heart she didn't know was empty. Years later, Mara graduated with honors and received a scholarship to a university in Washington. Sophie attended the ceremony, her eyes full of pride. As Mara walked across the stage, she remembered the day she found a phone on a cold pavement, the day she chose honesty over survival, the day that led her to a new world. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing emotional stories to life. Special request, comment, kindness can save lives, if you believe small actions can create big miracles. And so, a homeless girl's simple act of honesty didn't just return a lost phone, it returned her future.